A big Iowa State name that I was particularly excited about has hit the transfer portal, but I do think Iowa State will be just fine. And is this a sign of good news for Cyclone fans? We're talking about it today on Locked On Cyclones.
You are Locked On Cyclones, your daily podcast on the Iowa State Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Shout out to you for being here every single day, making this your first watch or listen of the day. I appreciate it more than you know. Wherever you're watching or listening, be sure to subscribe so we can prove once and for all that it is, in fact, a Cyclone state. Today, we are going to cover the Isiah Alston into the transfer portal news and kind of what that means for Cyclone wide receivers. Is it a good thing? Is this something they're going to need to bounce back from? Then we have big news on the lineman front. Obviously, the Helton twins entering the transfer portal. Not exactly great news, but we do have a bright side there. And then finally, I'm going to round things out on this Friday with a little bit of like an outlook. What do I think of this football team moving forward as we kind of go into the latter stages of this spring training period? I can't wait to dive into all of that and more, obviously, because I do get sidetracked from time to time. But let's start with Isiah Alston getting, I thought he was gaining traction. I was particularly excited to see what he could bring to this team, but he has officially entered the transfer portal. Let's take a look at what he has done, not only for Iowa State, but in the past. Obviously, a transfer in from Army, totaling about 800, 900, about 1,000 yards at Army between 2020 and 2023. Ranging between 2 and 22 catches season for Army. Then comes to Iowa State, a name that I think a lot of people were pretty excited for. And he ended up walking away with 2 catches for 52 yards, an average of 26 yards a catch. And that's nothing to scoff at. You know, me, myself, personally, I walked away from high school football with an average of 55 yards a catch. Yes, I did only have 1 catch for 55 yards, but we don't need to talk about it too much. It was third in the was it the D? I don't remember what the division was with that whole thing. I think it might have been in 2A, which is pretty cool. Nonetheless, let's actually talk about something that matters here. That Isiah Alston transfer. I thought he was going to be a really tangible asset for this Iowa State Cyclones team. We had heard kind of like how good he was at the 50-50 ball. Obviously, Higgins, very efficient in that department last year. And that could be something that Rocco could kind of lean on from time to time. We did talk about, obviously, with the departure of Higgins and Knoll, we're going to see more of Rocco implementing that kind of progression, the development of not 1, not 2. Okay, 3's open. Maybe we dump, whatever the case might be. Maybe it's a scramble situation. Obviously, every situation is different, but we could see some actual like progression in Rocco's game. But also at the same time, if you have a guy who is able to go 50-50 for balls and either make it go incomplete or come away with it, that's a very bright side. And so I thought Isiah Alston could kind of be that guy. We don't know exactly what to expect from Sowell or Xavier Townsend, but, with the body types they have, they could fall into that role, namely, obviously, Chase Sowell. But Isiah Alston, having been mentioned in that 50-50 conversation, that 50-50 ball conversation, that was somebody I was looking towards to kind of make some noise this year. I talked a little bit about his numbers at Army, the 2 of 52 this year, the 26-yard average. Those both came in the Miami game, the Pop-Tart Bowl. So, unfortunately, it was all at the end of the year in one game. I don't necessarily blame him. I just think the upside of him being on this team was really, really high. So when I saw the tweet today, or I guess the post on X or whatever you want to call it, I personally, I read it and I went, oh, like that was my genuine reaction. Like, man, I feel like we could have used that guy. I feel like he could have been a legitimate piece in the Iowa State offense. I don't know if you agree. Let me know down below. But, I think Iowa State will be okay. And I was on the radio yesterday, and Miller and Condon kind of had some ideas, and they were like, hey, what if this is actually a good thing? I love the angle. Let's roll with it. Taking a look at the Iowa State wide receiver depth chart here. Obviously, Chase and Xavier, Sowell and Townsend are going to be kind of the headliners of this wide receiver room right now, especially as transfers. And I do think that they will be really, really good. But another name that I am personally looking out for is Eli Green. And I know I've said this before, and I've said it actually many times. I just kind of wonder if his whole deal with like maybe he was slightly overshadowed by the whole really Higgins and Knoll experience. Is that a real possibility? I can't tell you for sure, but last year had 10 receptions for 115 yards. That's an 11.5 yards per reception average. That's a guy I feel like could kind of step into this whole role. And then you kind of just see some of these other guys returning to the game. I do think that there is an element of like, and we are completely speculating here, but Isiah Alston being like, all right, this is what happened last year. I don't want that to happen again in my last year of eligibility, on top of just looking at what I'm seeing in spring practice. I might be falling a little bit in the depth chart. Let's go ahead and hit the transfer portal. I don't think that that's a bad call. I also don't know if that's the case. It could be just that he doesn't love Ames, might be one of one in that situation, but I just don't know what the answer is. Unfortunately, I don't have his phone number, else I'd call him up and probably put him alongside me here right now. But I do think that the wide receiver room is okay for Iowa State. And I have said multiple times that the tight end room is going to be a very legitimate asset in the passing game. Obviously, Bramer, obviously, Gabe Burkle and what we saw from him last year, but Cooper Alexander as well. And we'll talk about this more in the third segment, but kind of expanding the passing game into that tight end role and what it could look like. Maybe that even pushes him down a little bit further in the depth chart, or as far as kind of target number, right? So maybe he's third in the depth chart at wide receiver, but he's actually more like fourth or fifth, depending on if we're running a 2 tight end set. You can't be mad at somebody for making the best move for them, but standing at 6'4", 205 and such a 50-50 ball expert, allegedly, that one did hurt me. It really did. I really thought this was something Iowa State could utilize to their advantage. Noah Pauley in that passing game kind of coordinator sense, like, it just gave him a lot more options. Does Iowa State need to go into the transfer portal and bring in a new wide receiver? I don't think so. I don't think that that's necessary. I think if they did, it would be kind of a little bit of a last-ditch effort. It's a little bit of a lack of a better term there, but I think it at least kind of is an option. I don't think you're going to find. You might find a diamond in the rough, but I don't think you're going to find a wide receiver wide receiver one at this point in the transfer portal. But nonetheless, I do think with wide receiver where it's at, with tight end where it's at, Iowa State will be just fine. I hope the best for Isiah Alston. Obviously, had a good run at Army. His performance in the Pop-Tart Bowl was awesome. Really, the whole Pop-Tart Bowl was I said it was a top 5 game in college football last year. I thought that was a super cool game. I think it was tied at 28 at the half, something along those lines. Offensive shootout. And then, unfortunately, for the viewer, Cam Ward did not play that second half. We'll never know exactly what would have happened had he played that second half. But Iowa State got it done at the end of the day, and that's what matters. We didn't see a lot of production from Isiah Alston all year, so I think to say that Iowa State will be missing a piece might be it's not the right thing to say, but I do think that they're missing a piece of like potential right? And so I wonder how the passing game kind of attack changes moving forward. Also, how to practice this change. I imagine that something has to change on that front and scheme wise as well. Maybe Chase Sowell can go up and get some balls at 6'4", 195, a little bit lighter on this chart that I'm seeing from Iowa State, but certainly the same height. And so I don't, without knowing what their wingspans are, you kind of just assume that they might be able to go up to that same kind of high point without knowing their verticals. And maybe they lean a little bit more on Chase Sowell. Nobody else stands at 6'4" on this depth chart that I'm seeing, but Dominic Overby stands at 6'5", maybe another guy we can utilize kind of just in that X or Z position, as it is technically a throwaway route, a clear out route, but a guy that could go up and get the ball if need be. You're going to have much taller tight ends, but you're also starting on the inside unless you were to run kind of a slot tight end look and flare them out. I don't know what they're going to exactly go with, but I do think Iowa State will be just fine moving forward. Speaking of moving forward, Iowa State has to find a way to move on from the Helton twins' departure. And this name really legitimately could be a very big deal for the Cyclones. We're talking about it coming up right after this. Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe, or sign in to the Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty Black Ops 6 and Avowed as easily as you stream your favorite shows. It's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. With 4K streaming, watch more than 1.5 million movies and TV episodes from your favorite subscribed services like Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus, Max, and more. Myself, I don't play a ton of games, but when I do, this is a great option to kind of just jump right in and get going. I love it myself. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K, second gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max, first and second gen, and Fire TV Cube, third gen. So the departure of Isiah Alston is one that I don't love it. I don't love it, but I think Iowa State will be fine. The departure of the Helton twins, another one that I thought we were really going to be okay with them in the lineup. But I think with their departure, there was a little bit of a dip in the kind of overall morale of at least the fan base towards the offensive line. But here at Locked On Cyclones, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, I am pumped up about this Austin Barrett guy from Indiana. Offensive lineman, was a freshman last year. Per his Twitter, he has officially entered the portal and will be visiting Iowa State. And I also believe he'll be visiting Oklahoma State. Just to kind of read this tweet here from Mr. Barrett, he said, "Thank you to all the schools who have recruited me and shown interest. Moving forward, I will be focusing my efforts on Iowa State, Oklahoma State, Western Michigan, Louisville, and Kansas State." Now, with the report that he is going to be visiting Iowa State and Oklahoma State this weekend in just a few hours, really less than 24, I consider that a few hours. To me, this is a situation similar to that of the NFL. If you've ever heard of a big name player visiting your favorite NFL franchise, be it the Cowboys, be it the Patriots, be it the who would be another big name, probably like the Steelers, Ravens. Trying to think of those really big markets. I myself am a Patriots fan, so don't have to worry too much. I think New England will be fine. Getting off track again, as I said. But those big names, when they come into the building, there's the kind of the phrase of like, don't let him leave the building, right? You got to build that relationship and get him bought in before he leaves and goes to see what anywhere else looks like. This is kind of that for Iowa State. Don't let Austin Barrett leave the building. How much do you offer him? What is he asking for? I couldn't tell you for sure, but just looking at his list of schools, you've got Big 12, Big 12, Western Michigan. Unfortunately, I don't know what conference they're in. Louisville, who's ACC, and Kansas State, who is Big 12 as well. So it seems like a Big 12 focus. So I would imagine, now this is literally just me speaking here, he's not in this for the money. And that I am making that assumption because the Big 12, as a whole, I think, has less money than the SEC or the Big 10. I don't see a single SEC or Big 10 school on this list. Obviously, coming from Indiana, a Big 10 school looking to kind of move into a superior football conference in the Big 12. Love that. Shout out Austin Barrett for knowing ball there. Louisville and the ACC, definitely a bit of a question mark. You know, who kind of leads the ACC? Could it be Miami from last year? Could it be Clemson or SMU? I don't know. This isn't Locked On ACC, but obviously Iowa State being a part of the Big 12, I know just how great Big 12 football is. And that being said, you know, I just don't think Iowa State or Oklahoma State or Kansas State has the money that an Alabama has. I do think Austin Barrett will be really good wherever he goes. Unfortunately, being an offensive lineman, I can't just spit a bunch of facts at you. But looking at Austin Barrett, obviously coming from Indiana, a playoff team, that feels like kind of the same thing with the NFL, with like bringing this guy. He is, you know, let's say he's on the Chiefs, right? He knows what it's like to win a championship. He knows what it's like to be a legitimate contender, to be a playoff team. He knows the culture. He knows what it's all about. Bring him into the building. It's an opportunity to kind of shed some light on that situation to the other guys in the offensive line room, to the other guys on the offense, to the other guys on the team. And so this is an opportunity, I think, for Iowa State to not only grab a great player, but also to put a little bit of that kind of like, hey, this is how seriously you kind of have to take it. We got to kind of lock in a little bit here. For Iowa State, I think this is an only upside type of signing, quote unquote, with the whole situation that NIL is in right now. But for Austin Barrett, just based on these teams that I am looking at, Iowa State, Oklahoma State, Western Michigan, Louisville, Kansas State, to reiterate, out of those five, are you telling me Iowa State is not the most legitimate contender? Are you telling me then that who would be the second? Louisville in the ACC? Kansas State, maybe? Oklahoma State has a long ways to go, and Western Michigan would be, they'd have to pull a little bit of a Boise State there. Feels like a little bit risky. To me, yes, I am an Iowa State fan. Yes, I do host Locked On Cyclones. But to me, Iowa State is the by far and away contender. Like that out of those five, if you would like to play meaningful football, Iowa State's the place to do it. And we've talked so much about the culture at Iowa State, obviously, with Campbell. And then we also talk all the time about odds and how much the extension of both of those guys, I think, means a ton. And the retention of those players due to that culture, how important that is. I think it's a very real thing. And so you come to Iowa State, who is a legitimate contender, especially out of the five schools he has listed in his tweet. And you also kind of experience the culture of Iowa State athletics, of Iowa State football, of Ames, Iowa in general. Jake Landry, a bit of a pivot here, but the new running backs coach from North Dakota State said that you can feel how important this game is to the city of Ames, Iowa at all times. He is actually quoted saying in his press kind of availability, media availability, you can go back and watch it. He said, hey, my neighbor, as soon as I moved in, came in and asked if I was a fan of the Hawkeyes or if I hate the Hawkeyes, or I forget how he phrased it exactly. But the point is, you know, I know, we take this very seriously here at Iowa State. We're a very passionate fan base, and that is what makes Iowa State one of the best in the nation. And I do think they're gaining national credibility. And this is a year that I think Iowa State can capitalize on what happened last year and try to extend kind of that prevalence on the offensive side, or excuse me, on the football side of things. And then obviously basketball been prevalent for years. So just from Austin Barrett's perspective, looking at those schools, I think Iowa State makes a ton of sense. And from Iowa State's perspective, I think we can get a lot better at the offensive line position, especially when you lose those Helton twins who were supposed to be legitimate potential starters based on what we had heard kind of from, I believe it's Clanton, that the linebacker coach, the offensive line coach, Ryan Clanton, and just how that unit works. Obviously, a couple names to throw out like Trevor Bird, Dylan Barrett, Garrett Rutledge, Brendan Black, a name that's been thrown around a lot. So it's not like Iowa State need this guy. I think we'll have dudes that can play that position, but at the same time, does this hurt? Like, I feel like this is a win-win scenario. Austin Barrett and Iowa State, let's get it done. Speaking of win-win scenario, win-win, that implies back-to-back wins. Iowa State, I think, will be doing that a lot next year. We're going to talk about that more coming up right after this. So we've kind of talked a little bit about some transfers going on in the Iowa State football side of things. We haven't really touched on basketball in a few days, but the transfer portal has been quiet. Here at Locked On Cyclones, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, I am always looking towards the next thing, and football is coming right up. I'm just going to say this right now. If you made it to this point in the episode, I kind of want to start doing Monday mailbags. If you guys want to shoot me a bunch of questions at Nick_Marv on Twitter, you can see it in the bottom left if you're watching on YouTube. Shoot them my way, and I'll start to kind of answer those on Mondays. I think that would be a great kind of thing to incorporate. But let's just talk a little bit about what's coming up, football, and where I think this team is at. Kind of a fun Friday type of conversation here. We've talked a lot kind of about this topic, and I am aware of that. We talked about the schedule. We talked about the wide receiver room. We've talked about all sorts of different things going on around the organization, or the university rather. And all of it leads to, believe it or not, a Big 12 championship. I know. It seems like it's probably a little far-fetched considering the success that Iowa State has had in the last, how far back do you want to go? But I do think that this is the year where Iowa State can really make some noise. And let's go position by position. Let's just have some fun with it. At quarterback, Rocco Becht, provided he stays with Iowa State and does not transfer to what seems like the really only option right now is Tennessee, could be really, really good. We've talked about his passing numbers, his QBR, his interception, the TD to interception ratio, all of that. And then obviously with Higgins and Knoll, I think he's going to be really, really good. Backups being Connor Moberly, the main one there. Then you got Alex Mansky, Major Cantrell, and Wyatt Baum. If his name is Wyatt Baum, and I am pronouncing it wrong with it because it's got an H in there, if it's Baum, that's awesome. He can throw some bombs at 6'4", 220, redshirt sophomore there. But I do think Rocco Becht kind of is the complete package for Iowa State. I think he's going to be able to make a lot of correct decisions at the quarterback position, which is really kind of what you need to do. We've seen time and time again, if you can just make the right decision and not give the ball to the other team, that's kind of really all you need to do. But I do think Rocco also has that element of, look, I can get exactly what needs to be done, but also a little bit extra. If you need me to scramble, if you need me to make a tight window throw, I can get that done as well. That's why I'm so excited about Rocco Becht coming back. And I am, if he goes to Tennessee, I will probably cry for about 24 hours. Shout out to Tennessee, all the comments on yesterday's video. A lot of fun to dive into all of those. But let's move on from the quarterback position because I think Rocco Becht's going to be the guy. I don't see him moving on for any reason, but if it were for any reason, it would be probably to Tennessee. And I still see that to be unlikely. At the running back position, it's going to be probably Carson Hansen and Abu Sama. There is it's an Illinois running back. I don't know if Iowa State is looking to even make any moves in the transfer portal. I doubt it would be at running back, if at all. And so let's just assume that they're going to move forward with kind of like Carson Hansen and Abu Sama at the 1-2 there. Other names obviously are in the depth chart, but just based on what kind of we heard from this media availability portion of spring football, it doesn't seem like any of them are really standing out. We're looking for consistency, is what Jake Landry said from this group, and I think that that's a fair assessment. Obviously, Carson Hansen was a little bit more focused on the pass blocking side of things, while Abusama was kind of more just in general football IQ. I think that the running back position is somewhere that Iowa State could see a relatively large jump as well, just because the guys are so young, right? Obviously, Abusama and Carson Hansen, both juniors this year, means last year they were both underclassmen. How much better do you get when you jump into that upperclassman category? I think for me, myself, quite a bit better, both on the high school and on the college level. So I'm excited to see what those two can do, not only with more reps under their belt, but with more film under their belt as well. The offensive line room feels like a little bit of a question mark to me. I'm not exactly sure what's going to happen. A couple names we've thrown around. Obviously, I think that if the Indiana offensive lineman Austin Barrett is able to make his way over, that would be exciting. I think Iowa State would benefit from that. But there are other names in here that we've kind of chatted about. The Helton twins departure is not great, but really at the end of the day, you can have 5 3-star linemen that work really, really well together, have the chemistry, perform better than 5 5-star linemen, and they don't really know each other that well. So I think this is a matter of chemistry and finding out what works best for the Cyclones. While I don't know what will happen at the offensive line position, and I know how important it is, I do think that Iowa State will be fine. There's plenty of time, and we've got plenty of talent. We can get it done there. Tight end room. This is where Iowa State, I think, can really excel and make the jump. This is where we can see a massive addition to the passing game. Benjamin Bramer, Gabe Burkle, Cooper Alexander, a name that we haven't seen a lot from, but certainly have heard a lot of upside. And my thoughts immediately go to the name Patrick Mahomes. Now, that might be the craziest sentence I've ever heard. Cooper Alexander, Patrick Mahomes. That doesn't make a lot of sense. But if you remember, Alex Smith on the Chiefs gets traded, I believe, to Washington. And everyone was saying, like, hey, this Patrick Mahomes guy, the real deal. That's how it feels with Cooper Alexander. A lot of like, hey, this guy is the legit deal. Look out for Cooper Alexander. I just feel like it's worth mentioning his name. We'll find out if that is the case in a few months. But as of now, I am kind of listing those three as the top three, and I think they can make a lot of noise in the receiving game. Speaking of receiving game, obviously wide receivers are going to be kind of in that category because, well, receiver in the name there. Jay Sowell, Xavier Townsend. I think Eli Green going to be in there. Brett Eskildson, mentioned by Rocco Becht as a guy who's killing it at spring training right now. I think Iowa State will be fine at wide receiver. We'll have to see if they can meet or potentially exceed expectations based on what happened last year. Exceeding expectations would be almost concerning. Like we're probably going to lose Noah Pauley at that point. We're probably going to lose a ton of wide receivers if that's the case. But we would have 1 year of glory. I do think that this wide receiver group that I'm looking at right now in this moment can make a ton of noise. Will we have 2 guys combined for 1,000 yards or whatever the stat was? It was the only one in college football. I don't know if that's the case, but I think they'll get it done. Moving over to the defensive side of things here, the defensive line is kind of the question mark, I think, for Iowa State. Obviously, the DB safety position, I'll get into that in a second. But I think a lot of this kind of hinges on where does Dom Orange fall, how much growth does he see year to year. Obviously, here's a return going to be kind of a big deal with what he said after last season. Like, hey, I've got a lot left to prove. I have to make some big improvements. That could kind of direct where this defensive line goes as a whole, because he can be so disruptive on the inside. And the reason I say that this defensive line is like kind of the weaker point is just because of the guys that are exiting, I guess. But I don't think it'll really be that big of a deal. I think at linebacker, the upside of the linebacker is so much. It is so substantial that it can it can legitimately cancel out defensive line and defensive back. I have said this, I believe 2 days ago. When was that? This linebacker room, I am super, super, super excited about. A lot of guys coming back from injury, a lot of guys who played a lot of snaps last year due to the injuries. Got to be very deep, got to be able to make a lot of plays, and they can cover up for some of the big names that we lost at defensive line and defensive back. Defensive back is a position that I do have question marks at. It's never a great thing when the defensive back coach is kind of unsure of who is the leader. Like, we're still finding that out, versus on the offense, it's like, okay, Rocco Becht, kind of that guy, obviously has to be at that quarterback position. But there are a lot of guys that can make a ton of noise. Benny Ngoye, one that I am looking towards, particularly Jontez Williams, Jeremiah Cooper. You can go on, but I don't know if Iowa State will be the top kind of pass defense that they were last year, but I think they'll be able to hold their own. The linebackers where they are, potentially covering for the defensive line a little bit. I think a run game, a defense is going to look very, very solid, and the pass game, that kind of all gels together. All that to say, I think Iowa State comes away with a Big 12 championship. I do think Iowa State comes away as a double-digit win team for the second time in school history and in back-to-back years. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in to Locked On Cyclones. Be sure to send some questions to @NickMarv for Monday mailbag. I'd like to make that a regular thing. And let's enjoy this time of the year. I think it's a great time of year. Until next time, Cyclone fans, sayonara.